Thank you everyone for joining this session. So thanks to Palo Alto team as well for arranging this amazing session. So today, I am Nischit Aryal from Digital Network Solution. So I'm the pre-sales engineer working in Digital Network Solution. So today I'll not take much time because I'll be covering a little bit about like what are the trends over here in Nepal, and like how the organization are securing their data and all that. So in that part, like if I have to quickly tell about it, currently in Nepal, actually all the organization actually they are into the digital transformation. So they are moving towards digital transformation. So it has become so important that we need to secure their data at any cost. So in that case, earlier on, the organization actually they have used perimeter firewalls and internal firewalls, and then the traditional antiviruses, to protect against any attacks, so related things. So in that case, in Nepal, as we can see that as every organization is moving towards a digital transformation, it is very important that we need to secure our data, and in that we need to have a solution which could actually prevent against all those sophisticated attacks that we are seeing in this modern market. So in order to stop ransomware, actually in the Nepal market, what we have seen is most of the organization actually they are moving towards moving from the traditional antiviruses to the endpoint protection with advanced threat protection and ransomware prevention as well. So through these, actually, we have seen that, as we can see, as earlier on, what we have seen is in Nepal as well, we have seen that a lot of the organization have become a victim of ransomware attack earlier on. So they have compromised the system of many organizations over here. So in order to protect that, actually, now slowly the organization are moving towards a solution which can prevent this kind of attack. So we can see that in many organizations as well nowadays, they are still using the traditional antivirus, which works only based on the signatures. And with the outdated signatures and all that, so actually it's very difficult to protect against the ransomware attacks. So for this, actually, what we are doing is many customers now are aware that they need to protect their data through the endpoint protection, which can actually prevent against all these sophisticated attacks. So in this case, actually, we Digital Network Solution, we are a partner of Palo Alto Networks, and we are pitching Cortex XDR, so which can prevent against this kind of attack. So yeah, we are the partner of Palo Alto Networks, and then so in order to stop ransomware attacks, so we are with the Palo Alto team, so to protect against this. So yeah, that's all from my side. So yeah, Roshan, yeah.
Thanks, Nischit. Over to you, Arnav, to take us through the XDR presentation.
Absolutely. Just give me a sec. Let me know once you start seeing my slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so hi everyone, and thank you very much for actually giving this opportunity to speak to you on a very, very important trend that is that has been there for a very long time, but becoming more and more dangerous and relevant. I am Arnav Khorana. I manage the Cortex business for North and East of India and SAARC countries in this region like Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. I am actually going to discuss today with you more on the ransomware trends that you might be or might not be aware of, but what you'll realize is that this trend is actually increasingly becoming more and more difficult as a pain point for all industries, and banking and regulated industries in particular. And that is what we are going to actually discuss, that what are the best practices for stopping this menace and stay protected, and what are we at Palo Alto Networks are doing, and what is the DNA behind our product strategy when it comes to protecting against ransomware, right? So this will be around 35 to 40 minutes of talk, and I would be very happy if you can share your Q&As on the chat. There is a Q&A button. Once you share them, we will definitely take 5-10 minutes to try to answer as many as we can, or we will actually do a follow-up and we'll send those responses back to you. So what's the agenda? As I told you, what we will discuss is ransomware in the wild, best practices. What we are doing is Cortex XDR, anatomy of a ransomware attack, and Q&A. So let's begin. Now, there are some very, very interesting trends, and all of these news items I have picked up from 2021, okay? One of the things that you should see is that ransomware is being used as a cyber weapon of choice. So it is becoming the most used attack, say vector or an attack technique, and it is becoming a cyber weapon for choice. If you have various tactics and techniques available with the attackers, ransomware is the one which actually is being used the most often. Then PurpleSec said that ransomware will continue to be the #1 threat. Palo Alto Networks, which is our own organization, has given a very, very interesting snippet in 2021 that the proliferation of ransomware attack as a service has made it more difficult, much more difficult for the customers, but much more accessible to attackers. Now, imagine that there is a 9-to-5 job that these attackers are doing in writing these ransomwares, which can be now bought at a very cheap price by any other attack group who does not have even expertise on ransomware. And they can leverage these ransomware as a service. So they pay a very small fee, and these dedicated organizations or the groups will actually do ransomware attack as a service for these other groups. So if there were now what is happening is that the capability to do a ransomware attack, which was very limited to some very bright, but unfortunately on the black hat side of the attack, the capability is now available with everybody, even if you did not have those kind of tricks and tactics and procedures in your own kitty. You can actually buy them from these attack groups. And one of the biggest things that has happened is that Revil, which was the very recently a ransomware attack which happened across, demanded $70 million to set everyone free. That $70 million became a record ransomware demand ever. Okay, let's go a little deep. The Kaseya ransomware impacted 1,500 companies. Look at the impact of a single ransomware attack can have globally. And now what we are seeing, you are all from security side, and I assume that you are equally concerned about the Log4j vulnerability, and we know that it is being also exploited in the wild and with the ransomware kind of tactics and techniques as well. Okay, so let's see what exactly is happening. what we are seeing is that with these attacks becoming increasingly difficult, the good guys are losing. And what is the reason behind it? If you analyze it more and more, you find that in 5 years uh, timelines, the way the attacks happen has totally changed. Now attackers are state sponsored. Now attackers have got funds to actually deploy techniques like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and they are using more and more autonomous and automated tools to do these attacks. While it is very, very difficult for organizations to actually change their tools which protect them and leverage this AI and ML. So they are currently running the same old manual ways of threat hunting, manual ways of protecting, signature-based technologies that cannot match up to the polymorphism that these attacks are bringing in. The machine learned millions and millions of ransomware files that these attackers are not actually creating in a day. In fact, let me give you a data that in a year, 950 million new malicious programs are being registered every year. What does this mean? This means that every day, 2.53 new million programs which are malicious are recorded. 2.53 million in a day, 950 million in a year. And that is a huge number. Imagine what will happen to those signature-based antivirus that you have deployed in your organization. Signature-based technologies that are protecting you at various attack vectors. What is happening? These technologies are nowhere matched to take up this kind of onslaught. And what it is resulting in? It is resulting in a huge, huge amount of alert fatigue. And what you are missing is that very critical alert in the entire tools. And that results in you getting attacked with ransomware. And look at the demand that ransomware is having. Okay, we are now seeing mind-boggling figures. 518% increase in the ransomware demand. Average ransomware demand is now running into multi-millions. Average ransomware paid, however, is still very low because people take backups and they restore their environment, don't pay ransom, but they forget that the ransomware does not leave their premises. They get attacked again and again and again. But the ransomware paid is also increased 82% from previous year. Highest ransomware demand before Revel was $50 million. It has become $70 million, and it is a record ransomware demand. It is also up 66%. And maybe if this was 70 million, we would have seen a much higher demand as well. And highest ransomware paid is 80% down from previous year. Now, this is a very interesting fact. So what is happening is that while demands are rising, people have stopped heeding to those demands. And this trend will definitely get overturned, because one of the things which is actually driving this ransomware not being paid to that extent is that people are changing the way they are protecting their environments. Second, people are allowing, okay, the disruption to happen and then do backup and restore. And they are not in a capacity to pay such a high demand every time. And that is where the problems actually become more and more dangerous, because as I said, attackers are not leaving your attack surface. So what are the best practices? Let's look at some best practices that you can do before an attack. And these are very generic. This is not salesy slide. This is not going to actually talk about a product, but this is what we are seeing in the market, what customers are doing, especially in your industry. We are seeing that one of the biggest problems is the vulnerabilities. Okay, apply the latest patches as soon as possible. Do not let your hardware, operating system, kernel, or applications unpatched. If Patch Tuesday is what Microsoft suggests, please do not leave it to chance. What you will see, now look at Log4j. it has been 11 days, if I'm not wrong. Okay, 4 different kind of vulnerabilities are already there. 5, in fact, have been found in these 11 days in the same technology. And all of us are using Apache some or the other way. So Log4j, which came in 10 days back, is the biggest headache faced by the CISOs in a very, very long time. Okay, and I'm sure you guys would agree with me. The biggest problem is that now what we are doing is we are updating, but people are finding legacy applications running the old versions, and it is becoming very difficult to update also. We understand that, but as far as possible, apply the latest updates, keep an air gap backup copy, because now the ransomwares, what they do is that they first destroy the backup on your endpoint straight away. They first go after the backup so that they can really, really damage your business, so that you actually end up paying. So keep an air-gapped backup copy at all times. Apply access controls. Now, one of the things that we are seeing is that while you are protecting your attack vectors, you have to protect your access vectors. You have to have a zero trust kind of environment. You cannot have your authentication at very basic levels. If you can have multi-factor, please go for multi-factor. If you can have implement ZTNA architectures, please go for those ZTNA architecture, because at the end of the day, they need a privileged access to some or the other environment in your, some of the other application in your environment for them to make a damage or make an impact. And that can actually, in defense in depth, the layered security that you can implement, please implement access controls with the same kind of rigor as you are putting a proxy or you're putting a CASB solution. Please put access controls everywhere. Don't allow PowerShell kind of environments. Okay, PowerShell is a legitimate file. Your legacy applications cannot find anything wrong in the PowerShell scripts that are being run in your organization. And attackers know this, so they use the legitimate Microsoft file to attack you. So restrict the use of PowerShell as much as possible. I talked about it. Defense in depth is the best strategy. Have a layered approach. Have your antiviruses, have your EDRs, have your encryptions in place, have your network security in place, have your network detection and response in place, and let this become more and more difficult layered approach to security. And these are no-brainers. Every CISO is aware of them. Let's look at some scenarios that even after, you will say that, Arnav, even after we did this layered security, we got attacked, right? We got an attack which actually evaded all the protection layers that we had. We missed something, okay? And it is very, very much possible because of the kind of number of attacks that we are seeing. There will always be one attack which you will miss. If you have been attacked or if you're under attack, okay, have an isolation strategy. That mean time to respond should be very, very less. You should isolate those network patches where you see an attack happening. You should be able to carefully analyze that, like, if the key is typically sometimes is there on the endpoint that that is infected, and if you have not been able to actually, if you don't reboot it, you might help forensics teams to recover much of the damage. So before rebooting, carefully consider looking at those endpoints or getting an IR team involved. The third part, which is there, involve IR. A proactive approach to incident response is the best thing that we have seen with organizations that get attacked from ransomware. Okay. Another thing, don't pay ransom. Even if you pay a ransom, what is the guarantee that the ransomware, the attacker who did this ransomware attack has left the perimeter? In Log4j, what they are doing is they have entered your premises, and if you're patching the system, they are inside and now what they're doing is they are closing the back door behind them. Okay, so there is definitely a problem that we are seeing where they are actually closing the back door itself. Okay, and you cannot reach them, and they are in your premises. So that is the danger that exists. Don't pay ransom, because it only deteriorates the things. It will become a repeated action. And check for a decryption tool. There might be a decryption tool which may exist. So we clearly know that security teams are struggling, right? And why they are struggling? Because there are too many attacks. So there are too many tools that you deploy. And when you apply too many tools, you are actually not finding a needle in a haystack. You are now finding a needle in the stack of needles, because too many tools will generate a lot of alerts, and you will face an alert fatigue, and you will know which is a critical alert and which is not a critical alert. Or your teams will actually close a critical alert thinking that it is not, right? So you have to have those kind of tools which can actually take the alerts and consolidate them into meaningful incidents that you can work on. Okay, so where does Palo Alto come into play here? We have understood the ransomware. We have understood that it's ransomware as a service. We have understood that it is basically becoming a problem for our CISOs and our security organization and our SOCs to actually manage the number of alerts that we are getting. Palo Alto has actually come out with some portfolio which can help automate the SOC, which can also integrate with your existing security operations and products and give you an important, I would say, a pillar that can actually support these modern day attacks and help you come out of them as soon as possible. And what are we aiming at? Reducing the mean time to detect and reducing the mean time to respond to these attacks. Simple as that. Let's keep this simple mantra that Palo Alto is trying to help us reduce the mean time to detect these attacks in our organization, and then reduce the mean time to respond to these attacks in our organization. As simple as that. Simple, right? So what is this platform all about? This platform has got three pillars. It is based on three very modern day technologies. The first is XDR, coined by Palo Alto itself. It's called extended detection and response. I'll explain extended detection and response slightly in detail today. And expanse, which is all about gaining visibility from an outside-in perspective, or what attacker is seeing in your organization and what it can see in your organization. What are the vulnerabilities that exist in your organization from an outside-in perspective? So expanse gives that visibility. XOR is all about automating these things. What are we automating? We are automating if there is an incident, if there is an alert coming from any technology, let it come. We will see that incident and we will automatically remediate or respond to those kind of attacks by plugging some, say, for example, if I have to go and close a port on firewall, or I have to actually block a URL on proxy, or I have to actually go and quarantine an endpoint, or I have to actually take down a server, or I have to patch a server. All of these things today are done in a manual way. Okay, so what we are talking about is taking those automated actions that SOAR can help you do, and how it does. It takes the visibility from these two products, which we are, and one of them we are going to discuss how it helps in remediating a ransomware attack. Okay, let me. Oops, sorry for this. Yeah. So the same platform is now shown you as an architecture. Okay, you have got Cortex XDR on the left-hand side of the screen, which basically is nothing but it's made up of a data lake, which is on cloud, and your endpoint data, your network firewall data, if you're using or GCP cloud, Amazon, or you're moving to cloud like Azure, You can actually put your cloud data and your identity data, which is your LDAP servers, your Microsoft AD, your AD365, or your Oktas of the world. All of that data can now be ingested into a single data lake. Okay. Now, what we do with that data, we stitch and correlate that data using our parallel computing, high performance computing cluster, which is the brain behind Cortex XDR. And that stitching and correlation, what it results in, it actually gives you a view of your environment. And I will show you what kind of view you get, that where this attack started from and what all it did in your environment. Okay. So we correlate the traffic from all these technologies to give you a complete attack causality view, or a root cause analysis view, as we call it. And what you can do with that root cause analysis within the same platform, you can do your antivirus function or EDR function. You can do your network detection and response function. You can do user entity behavior analytics function if you're looking at a UABA kind of platform, and you can do IOC and BIOC enrichment. IOC is indicators of compromise. For example, in the current vulnerability that is becoming a problem like Log4j, you can look at IOC hunting in your environment using Cortex XDR. Okay. Now this Cortex XDR and the data you get from our Expanse solution from attack surface management outside in, this data can go to Cortex XSOAR, which can analyze this data and automate the response, like go back to network security and plug the gaps. Go back to cloud, plug those cloud vulnerabilities. Go back to endpoint, quarantine those endpoints or remediate those endpoints. All of that automation can be achieved using XSOAR. XSOAR is not part of today's agenda because we are talking about ransomware, but XSOAR can actually do phishing simulations for you and phishing readiness for you and ransomware remediations as well, depending on the playbooks, depending on the workflows that you write, depending on your own context. Okay, let me say it that way. And all of these products can be ably supported by our partners like DNS, who can do managed detection and response services for you, or you can buy our own services and they can resell our services like managed threat hunting as well. Okay, so this is what we typically do. Now let's look at considerations for ransomware resilience. As a CISO, as a security team, what you have to look at is, what are we doing to defend against ransomware? And that is where the DNA, that is where the thought process of Palo Alto came in for defining this Cortex. And you will see what we do in the Cortex portfolio. What are we doing to defend against ransomware? Okay, what can we do to make sure we are not the next victim of this ransomware? And third thing that we have to ask is, are we prepared? Okay, have these questions in mind when you look at some other slides that I am going to talk about. Now, this is a classic display of what our SOC analysts are doing in every organization. I will not dwell too much time into it, but you can see yourself, it is all about confusion. Why? There is an endpoint product solution, there is a UABA solution, there is an antivirus solution, there is a network traffic analyzer that you have put, there is an EDR that you have put, there is an SIM you have put. And all of this data is working in silos. This data is not talking to each other. Who has to make sense of this data? The poor analyst who is sitting there. And imagine if he's looking at so much of data, can he predict what is the most predictable data and where it will come from? Chances of he or she missing that data is very, very high, right? So if that is very, very high, what we are trying to do, we're trying to change this with a single dashboard, which is Cortex XDR. And what this Cortex XDR does, it gives you complete visibility. Okay, so when you look at those key considerations, okay, you will, what do you relate to? Do you relate your organization to currently like this or this? The idea behind Cortex XDR is to make you very, very proactive in your approach to protect against ransomware. And God forbid, if there is an incident, in spite of that, you are seeing everything at one place, getting the complete visibility. using the Cortex XDR solution, whether the attack is percolating from your network, whether it is coming from your endpoints, whether it is coming from your cloud, or whether it is coming from any third party, all data we will ingest in XDR and give you something which looks like this. Okay. I'll take 2 minutes to actually explain this. And Rohan, please tell me how much of time do we have? We are actually looking at traditional antiviruses right now. How do these traditional antivirus look at ransomware? They are not geared up to look at ransomware. Why? Because they are only looking at known bad files. 5 years back, they only had malware detection technologies that could scan those malware or known bad files, and they would catch them the moment known bad files were used. But that was not the case. 5 years back, attackers decided that they will become more and more nasty by now actually masquerading as good files, but there would be bad behavior of those good files. So these endpoint prevention technologies of yesteryears added, apart from malware detection, added behavioral detections also, or we used to call them heuristics and advanced heuristic detections. And these advanced heuristic detections, what they did, they looked at the behavior of the legitimate files if they were executing something wrong. But then they were missing a very, very important thing, which came and became very, very pertinent in ransomware attacks, which was called fileless attacks. What is a fileless attack? Fileless attacks are those attacks which basically help you, okay, do an attack by using legitimate whitelisted files like PowerShell.exe, and you're writing scripts in that legitimate file. So the behavior of these files can be easily detected because they are doing something wrong. But if you have given me right to execute whatever is written in PowerShell, the antivirus technology cannot read into what is written in the scripts, and it only believes that this file is legitimate, signed by Microsoft, and whatever it is doing is legitimate, and whatever scripts it is running. But what is happening is that analytical detections that EDR promised, EDR said 4 years back that, look, we will catch these kind of scripts also by doing analytical detections. Why? Because we are having visibility into PowerShell.exe. Okay. Idea is that we all are having more and more visibility only. Okay. We are talking about more and more visibility. Now, what they also promised that since we are looking at all the processes, all the applications in your environment, in your endpoint, we will also give you the root cause of what triggered this attack. And this is the view I was talking about that you need in your environment. But then Palo Alto said, look, endpoint data is limited to endpoint only. But attacks actually get triggered using the network traffic, because these endpoints trigger much larger traffic across the network, and that network traffic that we see can now actually trigger some actions on other PCs, other computers, or east-west traffic or lateral movement of the attack, and we are missing that visibility if we are only looking at what is happening within that endpoint. So what we need XDR, which is extended detection and response, which goes beyond an endpoint and integrates the network logs with the endpoint logs to give us the end-to-end visibility into what is happening in my environment. And that is the causality view. That is the visibility that Cortex XDR can give you for every incident that happens in your environment. How does it help? If today your network teams are working in silos, the endpoint teams are seeing this only, and they're trying to actually reach and close this gap. But your firewall teams are seeing something else, and they are saying that, okay, we are seeing some alerts, but we know that this is coming from PC24, and there was no process running on PC24, by the way. So I don't know what is causing these attacks to happen in our environment. However, when we stitched this user's behavior, and the files that he executed on the endpoint, then we know that he ran a curl.exe to remotely do a PC24, do a command connection to this IP using PC24. And now we have completed the visibility. And now we are actually in a much, much better position to resolve this problem and to actually remediate and come out of this problem and ensure that this does not get repeated in our environment. So what we are in a nutshell doing, we are actually searching across all the data that we get from here. We are stitching and correlating the alerts coming from all of this and apply our deep knowledge of endpoint and network data to give you unmatched visibility and protection against any kind of environment. But you will say, that is good. How only about ransomware? Let's look at what a ransomware lifecycle is. Okay, Roshan, can you just let me know how much of time is left?
We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, thanks. So I think I will be able to finish this ransomware and how Cortex XDR that you have just learned, how it actually helps you protect your organization from ransomware itself. We will do that, and then we will just open for Q&A. Okay. There is a web browser, and somebody clicked some malicious JS file and downloaded a zip file in a very silent manner. And then this is actually a wasted locker actual attack lifecycle. And this created a PowerShell Cobalt Strike loader, which now went and created it started beaconizing that I have successfully implanted myself in the machine. And then they used the system utilities to take the privileged access and execute a successful ransomware execution. Now, how Cortex XDR, which we just talked about, helped. Every engine that we talked about, okay, helped us analyze what was happening. When the web browser was clicked, our behavioral threat protection actually understood that the malicious JavaScript is being downloaded, and this download action itself is malicious and is a wrong behavior. So we can trigger a alert here itself. If we are putting this product on protection mode, it will straight away protect it here. But we are not putting it in protection mode. We just want to see how the attack will percolate later. So we have put it in monitoring mode. And let's move. Again, if we see that PowerShell Cobalt Strike loader is what was there in the zip file, our threat intelligence correlation, which is done automatically, because now we are helping our analysts by doing the L1 mundane jobs of correlating the incidents or indicators of compromise with threat intelligence, which you are doing manually. We do it in an automated manner. We automatically trigger an alert that we have found something malicious here. And this is not done with a signature. It is completely machine learned. Okay. So whether you're offline or online, you're protected. And behavioral threat protection, again, because a zip file unloading a non-malicious code is the wrong behavior, we will stop it here also. Let's look at what happens. Now we are seeing that Cobalt Strike beacon script on PowerShell is trying to actually beaconize or get C2 connections created. This is an analytics behavior that we will be able to catch. And now we will also see that we have a behavioral indicators of compromise, which tell us that there is a lateral movement happening in your organization, that the attack is now not limited to one endpoint, but more and more endpoints are being approached by this Cobalt Strike beacon. We will use our behavioral indicators of compromise to get it. And then the moment ransomware protection module kicks in, which I'll explain you in just a moment, we will be able to actually catch it when it starts encrypting also. So the defense in depth comes into play, layered approach comes into play, multiple engines that Cortex XDR runs, and the multiple visibility that we have into what processes are doing. As I told you, whether network is involved, here network detections are also involved. So all of this chain, we can protect it straight from the beginning till the end. And that is where, if God forbid we missed it here, we have multiple engines running, and those engines are listed here. These are the multiple engines which are running. And these multiple engines will protect an attack from happening anywhere. Now let's focus on ransomware protection module a little. Okay. Typically, how exploits happen. This is a very interesting slide. Today's exploits actually come from authorized applications. That's what happened in SolarWinds. That's what happened in Revil. Okay, that the legitimate tool updates were poisoned. You were updating a tool, you never knew that you were actually updating your environment with malicious code. So what they do is, there are bugs and vulnerabilities in every program. And in next update, what happens? Vendor patches some of these bugs and vulnerabilities, but the malicious authorized application is left to run in an environment because it is a legitimate application. It does the heap spray, it does the return of process protocol, it runs the utilize the OS functions, and malicious activity begins. Why it happens so? Because this was a known code application. And only way you could have actually known that there was something malicious was when the vendor patches were sent. You deployed these vendor patches, and these vendor patches were poisoned, and they started doing the bad behavior. Why Cortex XDR becomes important? Because it creates this kind of behavioral threat protection at every level. So if we are seeing after a patch, there is something wrong behavior being done by any of these files, we will block it. No matter whether it is a legitimate file, no matter whether it is signed file by any known OEM, we will look at exploit technique being used and protect you against technique. And that is why we map 88% or more to MITRE attack framework. So we are looking at techniques, tactics, and procedures which basically are used by attackers and not the attack known files only to protect you. And that is what XDR is all about. Last but definitely not the least, we have decoy files which can help you by being the first files that get encrypted. Okay. Now, any legitimate application in your environment does not have any need to touch those decoy files that we have implemented as honey traps. If those honey traps are actually tinkered with by any process, any application, any service, we will stop that process, application, or service at that very instant. Okay, and protect you proactively from any ransomware attack. So I will skip this. I'll just give you a snippet into one service that we have. No matter how good your technologies are, you have to continue to improve your posture. And we have got two services. One is proactive ransomware readiness service, which helps you do a ransomware assessment in your organization. Typically, every bank goes for this ransomware assessment. We do also have threat hunting tools. We do advanced threat hunting exercises in your environment, and we check your environment for ransomware resilience or give you recommendations on how you can actually increase that resilience from ransomware attacks. So with this, I will stop sharing my screen.
It was a great insight from Mr. Arnav. So thank you very much for this session, along with our Palo alto team, Deepak, Biswaji, and all the customer out there. Thank you very much, everyone. And if you have any queries or if you want any further session related to Cortex XDR or Cortex maybe XOR or something like that, so in that case, you can reach out to us. We'll be happy to assist you on that part. Thank you very much.